Okay, so thank you for that. So let's say you want to do something with AI right now. I think many of you feel the itch, especially after this conference. What would you do? Well, if you're a smart company, you create like a super nice environment where you can hire very professional people, having lots of fun. I wonder, like, who of you data science engineers have like a fun environment where you have maybe go-karts at the office or Nerf guns or... Yeah, at least some. Well, look, if you want to hire good people, create a funny environment. That works. But many companies just want to get their toe in the water, want to try out what to do, and they don't know if AI is really a thing for them. So the other option you have is the other one. So what you can do is, instead of hiring employees to do the data science for you, you can hire very expensive consultants. And of course, they say consultants are really bad and, well, they're very expensive, but it's not always true. Like Consultancy AI, it's a thing. Like there are many consultancy firms that I know that do really good work. And some of them are here, just put their logos on a slide. Those are from Belgium, so I'm sorry if there are other countries here who feel underrepresented on the slide, but obviously there are other consultancy firms. I don't work for any of them, so... but you can check out those guys. They can help you out to get your first experience in machine learning. But is that a commodity? Like, are consultants a commodity? Well, in a way they are, but still they're maybe not really the commodity that you're looking for. Now, maybe go deeper into the word commodity, because we all know that it's just another buzzword, right? People talk about commodity as it's something, well, I don't know, something fancy or whatever. But what does it actually mean? So if you go to dictionary.com and you type in commodity to figure out what they really mean, is that it's just an unprocessed or a partially processed good. Doesn't sound like AI at all. And the examples that they give is like grain, fruit, vegetables, or something like that. Doesn't sound like AI. So basically, commodity is also a business buzzword. So in business, it also has an extra meaning. And for me, that meaning is that you need exchangeable suppliers. So, okay, then you would think like, okay, Consultancy.ai, they're exchangeable. So you can go from one consultancy firm to the other, even though they claim to be different, but still they're very similar. But it's not just that. It's not only exchangeable suppliers. You also want it to be really cheap and really easy to get. You don't need to go through a lot of negotiations to basically get to your AI solution. You want it to be really simple, really cheap, and you want to be able to move from one to the other. So if you want a grain of sand, it's easy. There are many suppliers of sand, and because there are so many suppliers of sand and all the sand is more or less the same, well, maybe experts will say that I'm lying, but anyway, from my perspective, all the sand is the same. So it becomes really easy to change suppliers, and the price of sand is really low. Although in India there's like a sand mob going on. If you don't know what I'm talking about, it's a funny story. Well, not for the people in India, but Google it, it's interesting. Anyway, what's also for me a commodity is Windows computers. You have so many brands who just provide the hardware, you install Windows on it, and whether you have hardware from one company or another one, it doesn't matter. Like, you can just install Windows on it and you will have a good computer no matter which brand you buy it from, at least if you stick to the top, I don't know, 20 brands or so. Android phones were actually going in the same directions. Like Android phones become more and more of a commodity. Whether you buy a Samsung, Huawei, I don't know, LG phone, it doesn't really matter. Like in many cases, you can get a really good phone. And then you see brands popping up like OnePlus, or there's a new one coming up, the Pocophone F1, who have really cheap phones that are really good performers. So there's a lot of competitioning happening there. And then there are cloud providers. So cloud providers provide us with AI solutions. So are these cloud providers a commodity? Well, maybe. So for virtual machines, they're definitely a commodity. So if you take your virtual machine on AWS or you go to Azure, it's more or less the same. So you can just easily switch and, okay, maybe the cloud providers aren't super cheap, but you have cheaper alternatives like Hetzner or those kind of companies where you can buy really cheap virtual machines. So those things have become a commodity. But cloud services, there's still a difference. Like AWS Lambda, for example, I don't know if you know it, but it's like a serverless architecture that is much harder to exchange from one service to the other. So how about AI? Well, for AI, there are a couple of cloud providers that do something interesting, AWS, Azure, and Google Cloud, and they really provide us with some options. But now, I'm just out of curiosity, like who likes the cloud AI applications? Like who used it, who likes them? A few people, okay. And who is of the other direction? Who think they suck? Personally, I don't like them, but maybe, it depends. Well, for me, they suck because I'm a data nerd, right? I'm a nerd, and I think that I can do better. Doesn't always be true. You saw if you saw the talk about Christoph Henkelmann, people have like an impression that this or that technique is the best thing you should use, and we assume that we know better because we are data nerds and we want to do it our own way. So I don't like cloud providers because I think I can do better. But what you should really ask is, these solutions, who are they for? Who are they built for? And the real question is, what do you need to solve your problem? Do you need a Trabant, which is the old Soviet Union car that allowed, you might laugh, but if you count how many Trabants there were on the road, it's insane. Like, it's a super small, cheap car. The outer shell is made of plastic, so most of the Western cars, they would rust away with a little bit of rain. In a few years, at that time, you wouldn't have a car anymore. But the Trabant, you had a plastic shell, and everything in the car, okay, it broke down very often, but it was really cheap to repair. So what you ended up with was a very cheap car that a lot of people could use throughout their lives and to do their business. Or, yeah, do you want the Trabant of AI or do you want the Ferrari of AI? Well, if I ask you like that, obviously everybody goes to the Ferrari, but imagine that if the only car you could buy at this point would be a Ferrari, well, nobody or not that many people would drive a car, right? Not me, at least. So what you really want is AI for the masses. So AI that a lot of people can use, even though you're not an expert. So there's this disruption buzzword, if you think about AI for the masses, because that will mean that there's an AI that will disrupt the entire market and all the experts that will lose their jobs because you don't need them anymore. So what is disruption? Because that's another of those buzzwords that people really like to throw around with. Dictionary.com will tell you that it's a forcible division into its parts. Well, okay, doesn't sound like a businessy thing, but actually the guy who first introduced this terminology into the business scene is Clayton Christensen. And he has like an explanation right there. You don't have to read it. What's important is if you want to disrupt an economy, what you have to do is you have to start with a simple application. Do some product or service for a simple application. And you start at the bottom of the market. So you don't have to build the Ferrari, you build a Trabant, basically. And then you relentlessly move up market, because you start with a simple thing and you make it better over time. And because you start making it better over time, but you are a cheap thing, you end up displacing established competitors, and that way you become, well, a fierceful competitor even for the Ferraris of this world. So this disruption buzzword, if you think about that, well, then it's obvious that the Trabant AI is the one that's gonna win, if at least it goes that way. So if I think about Trabant AI, and I told you I'm a data nerd, so I can be very picky about what I use. If I think about it, I think about Azure. And it's just because I don't like using it much, but I have to be honest, like it makes a lot of stuff really simple. If you want to train a model and you use their tools, it becomes really easy to train a model, and you can click, drag, drop, and do some easy stuff and get some quite good results, even though I don't use it, but actually I've seen really good results with these simple tools. There's another thing, like Google Cloud is trying really hard to also offer this kind of tools. So they make it really easy for you to build like a flow of computers that each do part of the processing and do really interesting stuff. And they also have a platform called Dialogflow where it's really easy to create a chatbot. Okay, there are easier services out there, but still, it's an easy way, and a lot of people with not much experience can clearly create a chatbot, and it's one of the most used platforms to build chatbots. So it works. But if you ask me, the performance is underwhelming because I told you, I'm a data nerd. I want to go for absolute performance, but in most cases, you don't need that. And if you are like me and you find the performance underwhelming, you're not the market. You're not the persons they're aiming at. You're somewhere at the higher level of the market waiting to be disrupted, like probably I'm going to be somewhere in the future. So let's say you want, maybe instead of the Trabant AI, you want to look for the Ferrari AI. And if you look at all the big players in the field, who has the best marketing machine? For me, that's IBM with Watson. I don't know if you read like all the promises that they make, and if you read those, for me, IBM Watson must be the most wonderful thing out there. Just first asking, does somebody in the room work for IBM? Don't be afraid, just raise your hand. I'll give you the opportunity, if there is somebody, I'll give you the opportunity to respond later on and correct my mistakes. But anyway, I apologize for what I'm going to say next. So IBM did a really interesting thing. Like they made an algorithm that could play Jeopardy. Jeopardy is this game in the US. In Belgium, we have an equivalent called Waagstuk. Don't know where the name comes from, but you probably in many countries there is some equivalent for it. And the idea is you get the presenter gives you the answer to a question. And what you have to do as a player is you have to figure out what the question is. You have to say, for example, like in this example, who is Bram Stoker? I don't know who he is, but there's probably an answer to that question that the presenter gave them, and they managed to find out the real answer. And the IBM Watson algorithm managed to win that game by a big margin over what humans can do, even though it seems like it's with language, it's a complicated thing. And yeah, the way the question is, well, the answer is given and you need to give the question makes it really tricky, at least for humans, but also for computers, because it took a while before we were able to solve that with a computer program. So it's really impressive what IBM did there. And they assumed, like, okay, we have this really cool algorithm. So because we can win Jeopardy, we basically own the Ferrari of AI, and we're going to market that for crazy. That's what they did. They went into healthcare. And they basically said, like, okay, from now on, we're going to search all medical papers, and we're going to help you out solve cancer. We will make sure that you're up to date with all cancer research, and you will do the best possible thing for your patients. So, sounds promising, right? Like, if AI can do that, let me sign right here. And that's what a lot of hospitals actually did. Like, over 1,600 hospitals worldwide, mainly in the US, signed up for this. And they promise a lot of stuff, like you can see in the bottom of the slide, but you should just Google it. Like, it seems the most wonderful thing. And I hope it's true, but if you Google IBM Watson and cancer and you check the news, these are the kind of articles that you see. And to be honest, that's really disappointing. So what has happened is that a lot of the advices that IBM Watson gave actually could have caused the death of a lot of people. So that's not what you want in healthcare, right? Like, if you make a solution in healthcare, you might suggest something, and that's what it did right here, but you really want to make sure that if you as IBM even, if you claim that your system is so wonderful and so perfect that it's never going to fail, and then, well, you basically cause people to die with whatever you present. So obviously this is not the right approach. Obviously they overestimated themselves, or at least they overmarketed themselves. Because if you are in machine learning, you know that, as I said in another talk, that machine learning basically sucks because it's never perfect. It doesn't work perfectly, even though you might want it to work perfectly. And if you ask me, what IBM did is they won this wonderful game in Jeopardy, and they did it really well. But what they have built is a solution for Jeopardy, but now they want to use that solution for other problems. But they can't figure out what the problem is. And actually, this whole thing sounds like Jeopardy. So they have the answer, but they're still looking for the question, the problem that they're trying to solve. So maybe they should use Watson to figure out what the ideal market is. And their problem would be solved, and they could start off building really cool products, like probably most of you guys are doing, but on a smaller scale, and you're not claiming to be the world savior with your technology. So I think cloud commodity is going to be a thing. Like, maybe not for me, but I will be disrupted at some point. But for a lot of people, it might be a way to enter the machine learning market and start building cool stuff, because you don't have to know the nitty-gritty details of how these algorithms work. But to be honest, I think we're missing something, because of course AI is the most sexy thing in the world, at least from my perspective. But is that the thing that's going to solve all our problems? And to illustrate the thing that I think we're missing, I stole a slide from Andrej Karpathy. He works for Tesla. He was a very famous deep learning researcher, and Tesla acquired him, and now he's their head of research for self-driving cars. And he had this slide in a slide deck at some point where he mentioned, like, when I was doing my PhD or as a postdoc in research, I spent about 5% curating the data that I have. And 95% I was working on really cool machine learning algorithms. And you should read his papers, he did really cool stuff. But now that he works at Tesla, it's almost the other way around. He almost spends like 80%, at least 75% of his time on curating the data, cleaning it, making sure it's labeled, pre-processing it, all that messy stuff that you don't want to deal with. That's most of the time that you spend as a machine learning engineer, and I probably am not saying much new to most of you guys, but it's, yeah, the thing you spend the most time on. And only, well, about 20 to 25% of your time is spent on creating these cool algorithms to solve the problem. So if you want to make AI a commodity, well, the biggest hurdle is really cleaning up the data. It's not building these cool AI models. Okay, it's cooler to build cool AI models, but the real problem is where it lies in the data. So what you should build is a company called datasets.ai. I didn't try this URL yet, but if you're quick, you can buy it before me. By the way, the commodity.ai URL is still available, and some weirdo bought it, and it's selling it for $30,000 for some reason. So you can still buy it if you have an outrageous amount of money. Maybe somebody bought it by now, I don't know. Anyway, what you should build is datasets.ai as a company. And actually, Amazon is quite smart. They recently announced at their reInvent conference that they're going to help you out with labeling data, that they're going to do more around data processing and that kind of stuff. So at least even Amazon has figured this out, and they're doing interesting stuff around that. So what else is there? There are a lot of labeling tools. Never used this. I just Googled labeling images, and I found this slide right here. So there are companies that give you labeling tools where you can label images that you can use. And probably for other data sets, there are labeling tools available. And there are many companies, these are specifically for images, that you can use to label images and even train models and turn that into an API. Even the company Robovision, where I work for, offers that kind of solution. Which one is best, we can discuss that offline, but these integrated solutions allow people who know nothing about machine learning, who are developers or not even that, to have upload a data set, label it, train a model, and have an API available that people can access. And the same thing is happening with chatbots. And I have to be honest, I don't know much about chatbots, and these are the only two companies that I know, but probably a lot of you people know a lot more, and there are these integrated chatbot solutions that make it even a lot easier than Dialogflow to create a chatbot. You can just click, drag, and drop conversation flows into each other, create intents and all that, and you have something really simple, ready to go and up and running really fast. So as a developer, I think, well, there's a lot of promise coming, right? Because you don't need to dig into the nitty-gritty details of all the machine learning algorithms out there. There will be tools available for you to rapidly build solutions. And of course, if you're a data nerd like me, you have the probability that you get disrupted. But I think there are so many tasks that we still need to automate, that we still need to change, that are not so general like a chatbot or an image classifier, but that require a lot more specialized work. So I think even for the experts, there's still some room around that. Or you can even build those integrated solutions for whatever market that you think about. So if you're interested in building such a, well, your own startup, your own disruptive startup, why not do it? And become a developer entrepreneur. Well, for some people it might be a bit tricky, others are already doing that. But if you want my advice, I would definitely first read The Lean Startup. And then especially if you go business to business, I would read Crossing the Chasm. It's about how you go from a small niche market to a bigger market. And then there is Startup School by Y Combinator, where they give a Stanford course on how to start a startup. And Y Combinator is actually quite good at that because they are the biggest seed investor in the world and also the most successful. They're behind Airbnb, Reddit, and a lot of very interesting companies. And they really know what they're doing. And for some reason, they're really nice and they publish all that stuff online for free, or at least some of it. So check out their stuff, but if you are like me, probably before you start on that, you're too lazy and you want a summary, I'll give you a short summary. A lot of people have crazy ideas. Like, I have this fantastic idea, I'm gonna build this startup. Maybe some people think that they're gonna be rich with that idea, and they keep that idea to themselves. But to be honest, ideas are worthless. If it's a good idea, somebody else thought of it. If it's a bad idea, well, probably nobody else thought of it. And the only way you can realize that you had a bad idea is to talk about it. So if you have an idea, talk to your colleagues, like, hey, I have this cool idea to build, I don't know, this AI solution, and you talk about it, and then they probably tell you like, yeah, okay, but that's cool, but who's going to use it? And that's what you need to think about, who's going to use that solution that you're crafting. So if you want to know what you should build, how you should start your startup, what to build in your startup, what you have to do is, and it's not nice of me to say, but you have to fake it. You have to go to your potential customers and say, with whatever you think you can realize, obviously, because if you are sure that you can never make it, but if you think you can make it at some point, you just sell them the product that you want to sell them. And then you see if they bite or not. And you really have to ask for money, even though you don't have anything yet. Because if they are willing to pay for your product that you're promising at that point, it means that you have built something valuable for them, because they're willing to put in money. And what is the first thing that you have to build? Usually they say you have to build a minimal viable product, but in my opinion, you have to build a minimal viable feature. You have to build a simple thing, a simple added value, and start from there. And you have to solve small market problems. Start in a small market, enter with a simple feature, and see if it sticks. Uber, don't do that. Uber is aiming for a big market, tries to sell a lot of stuff to a lot of people, but Uber, and you know Uber is uber expensive. Because if you see the amount of funding that they need to conquer a large market, it's not something that most of us will accomplish. Like, where will you get the money? In the US, you might get it, but in Europe, it's really hard to come by. So don't go after a big market, because you will have a lot of competitors with the same idea trying to conquer their market. And you have to be first, and you have to throw in such high amounts of cash that it's almost impossible to be the one to beat the system. So you should solve small market problems and do it really, really well. How can you do it really well? Well, one of the ways is just you add a feature and then you see how they like it. And then you ask them what they need next. Maybe your big vision of all the tools you want to build is not the thing that your customers actually need. So it's by interacting with your customers that you can figure out what the next thing is that you should build. And if you want, you can use AI to do so. But don't think that AI will solve all your problems, even though I would like to, because I love all machine learning stuff. But in many cases, you don't even need AI, but if you do, you can use it. But only listen to your customer needs. And if AI is the way to solve their needs, well, then it's the thing that you have to do. So listen to your customer, build what they need, what they're looking for, and solve their problems. Not like the strategy that IBM is taking, by just giving you a solution for a problem that doesn't exist. You have to work the other way around. You have to really understand the problem and solve that. And then you need to become a small market leader. That's where crossing the chasm comes in. So once you become a leader in a small market, big companies will start buying from those market leaders. Big companies don't buy from startups. Maybe they subcontract via into a startup, but they themselves will never hire a small company or a startup, or almost never. Smart ones are changing that idea, but most of them don't do that. And once you have conquered that market, and once bigger companies have become your customer in that small niche market, then you can start exploring next small markets. You do that a couple of times, you try a couple of small markets, and only then you can build your think big AI thing that you have been thinking about. And then you can basically go to the bigger markets and have something really cool that conquers the world. But start small. So the whole idea of this talk is, if you want to build a commodity or use a commodity, you have to think small. You have to start with something simple, maybe a simple cloud solution. Don't be as arrogant as I am to say that these cloud solutions suck. They work for a lot of people and they're good. Start somewhere small. If you want to start a startup, do the same thing. And if you do that, I can guarantee you that the probability that you will succeed will be very much higher. Thank you.